Packet Pushers has a weekly newsletter, Human Infrastructure Magazine. Him is loaded with the very best stuff we found on the internet, plus our own feature articles and commentary. It's free, doesn't suck, it's private. We don't sell any of your information to anybody. You can get the next issue at packetpushers.net/newsletter. And until then, just remember, cloud is what happens while IT is making other plans. Okay, Chris, the recording's still going technically because Ned and I are going to do our intro in just a bit, but you're done, man. You're done. That was a really, when we got to the API part of the conversation, especially my lack of knowledge about API gateways and what all it could do and how you have to think about it came through a bit. But that was really intriguing. You had said SaaS before, but the way you had said it, something about it made me think, oh, it's a SaaS offering, but he's running his own version of it locally as an instance. And so then as soon as it clicked on, that it's like, no, he's plumbing to SaaS. And that's another part of the bloody complex multi-cloud he's dealing with. I was like, oh, geez. Okay. It's even harder. It's even harder.
So it's become normal days, so now we don't really think about all that stuff anymore. There used to be a lot of time that we definitely were pulling our hair out. Lots of time just trying to get simple stuff to work. You're trying to figure out how to troubleshoot some of that stuff. So
I don't know, man. All the old school network engineering, everything was on-prem or you owned it and you had your own WAN and all that stuff it's like it's the same, but it's different because there's so many pieces of it you don't know and all the over-the-top stuff we have to do to connect these environments and the different controls.
Yeah.
Again, it's the same, but it's like it's more complicated because you were talking about security in depth. You run it up the stack of all the different security layers that are there now. And again, it's like, yeah, we've kind of always had that and then kind of not. It's just so much more and more detailed than it ever has been.
Yeah. I mean, in general, the whole like the aviatrix and stuff, or not even that, just moving. I've in the network space, I've tried to move most everything we got into some kind of controller-based environment. So we moved to the big switch for the data center many years back, just because we could automate it. It's like we were small enough data center. There wasn't a big deal for big switch because they kind of have some scaling issues, but you can still have pretty large environments with it. But it gives you a point to do all your automation against, and tons of stuff are already built. SD-WAN, obviously controller-based, makes a lot of things much easier to do. And then Aviatrix comes along, you're controller-based in there. And we found all these pieces. As soon as you moved into the controller-based environment, it was a whole lot easier from a scripting standpoint. You didn't have to manage what node you're talking to and, I'm going to configure this on one X node, configure something else on another node. Everything is all in one place. And it actually made our ability to do automation a whole lot easier without having all the framework and all the pieces around managing, instead of having thousands of nodes that you're trying to configure, you're configuring against one or two devices here or there. So taking that stance was the same thing when we kind of got into the cloud. It's like, oh, there's a controller-based offerings out there and it gives us some of the native protocols and stuff that we would expect from a control plane. Now, under the covers, 99% of those platforms don't use BGP or anything else either. They're still just manipulating stuff within their own APIs. But from our perspective, having those controllers and having those tools like that are very much modern, mainly with real APIs to make requests against, and not something you're trying to hack together through a CLI and through some of the netconf and all these different pieces that are so obscure. The true controllers will definitely raise that level, bring the level up of what each call is doing and how much extra work it does on your behalf compared to what you would think of. And against a single node, even if it has a good API, you're still doing everything specific to that node.
Yep.
And you have to write all the code to manage all those translations and stuff instead of.
Oh, I've been thinking about building course curricula for some of this stuff. I'm at a loss of how to approach it, because so like where you're at built on a whole lot of different skills to get to that point where you're at
Yes.
with that controller, and there's a lot of assumed knowledge that's built in. So how do you teach that? I've been thinking I'm just going to build modules from the ground up. I'm going to teach fundamentals and then go into tooling and then go into centralized management at the end, because that's kind of where you end up. You don't
Mm-hmm.
start there. If you do start there, you have no idea what's actually going on.
Mm-mm.
It
No.
just, but it feels like the amount of knowledge you have to truly understand at an architectural level, like where you live, to grasp all of this and be able to understand what's really broken when it breaks, it's monumental. It just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know,
mean,
Ned.
just from the networking standpoint, everybody, oh, do we become coders? What is our technology? What do we need to know? Those kind of things. Everybody's like, is that changing a whole lot? And it's like, well, to me, it's like all those pieces are still very important. All the knowledge that you use, all the troubleshooting skills, all those things, they didn't go away at all. They're
Yeah.
actually probably even
Yep.
more important now because so many things, you click a button and a whole bunch of stuff happens most of the time. But when it doesn't, who are you calling? How are you going to get in there and figure out what to do about it? And it's been abstracted several layers up. What actually broke? Is it just your programming failure somewhere where you messed up and didn't handle some error handling somewhere, or did something happen on an actual device in the past? There's all the pieces or all the skills that you had before are still there. It's actually just a whole new set on top that you need to work on.
Right.
So internally, like automation wise, we've got Cloud Foundation, we've got Terraform, we've got Python, Ansible, obviously. So like all these things are all being used because they were done to fit some specific use case. There's not necessarily one overall piece. Up until last year, they actually purchased Resolve to use as an automation platform. So now all of our stuff we're working through modules and changing stuff from being Python or Terraform or whatever and migrating into Resolve. So you had a whole nother SaaS application sitting on there. Then we had to stitch into the network because it's reaching inside of the corporation, right? To do all
Resolve, I
this.
haven't even heard of, and you're using that and not Glueware and not iTential and not Pliant.io and whatever the other choices are that are out there. Interesting.
Yeah.
I got to
So the
figure out what
Resolve
is.
was much more. It's much more of the scheduler framework. The X happened, now what? So it has all that logic is all built in. It's a graphical interface. It's not terribly different than Glueware, but it's definitely targeted at applications and network. It's not specific to any given area. It's a
it's
much
a low
broader,
code, no code kind of tool.
Yeah. It has lots of stuff that it has modules though to drive your Ansible stuff. It has modules to drive stuff back into Python and Terraform and everything. So it's got all these modules to do translations, and then inside of it is a GUI looking application. That the bigger deal is that it's a big framework. So when someone writes a routine that does a certain work, you can share that, and everyone else could see and use those. So it's like publishing your API, but it's not in an API format. It's just here's your function that you can use, and anybody else that you've given rights to has the ability to make calls into that.
It's
so even
a
as we're
Goldberg
going,
machine.
so as we're going through it, it's like, okay, we've kind of done multiple different technologies, and then you have to go, oh well, now we got Resolve, now we have to migrate all these, and at least getting it to where it's the scheduler and it's the one that can make the workflow decisions for you and stuff. Maybe your code doesn't change at all. Maybe at the end it finally calls your code, but you're building all this other side of it to create more of the self-serve pieces of it. I say those, it's not like NI is super mature on any of this. We're just involved in all of it right now. still
no
working
one
out
is.
still
Yeah, it's
working
funny.
out
You
all the
say we're
kinks.
not super mature, but I don't think you realize how far along you are in comparison to some of the other folks we talk to.
Yeah. I realize that. It's like, but when you're day to day living it, it feels like a little hairy a lot of times, right? Like, we've done all these pieces, and you look back at them and go, well, they're working really well, but not really sure. They've been developed by multiple people over a good period of time. Then you have to review them and figure out how to migrate them and stuff, and to make use of the new tools.